What's your happy list? What are the things that you do in your life where you lose track of time because you're just in this flow or joy? Or even if you can't think of anything now, what about when you were a child? What are the things you love to do? And from there, they generate a list of, sometimes 10 things. The conversation is always the same. Oh my God, I totally forgot how much I loved doing that. And then we work on making time every day, every week to do something on that list. And to me, it comes down to once you start reconnecting with this joyfulness within yourself, it's an energetic shift that starts to happen.
Sometimes nothing is actually wrong, but everything feels tight. My guest, Monique Giroux, spent years in senior leadership, doing meaningful work, hitting every target, and quietly carrying anxiety that she didn't even know how to name. Then one day she noticed something small. She could finally breathe without pain. That breath sent her on a completely different path, from boardrooms to forests, from chasing validation to learning how to stop. We talk about high functioning anxiety, that hunger to be seen, getting lost on purpose, and why the in between is not a problem, it's an actual doorway. This isn't a hustle story, it's a listening story. And if something in you has been asking for air, this episode might be exactly where you find it. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Why We Pause. I am here today with an amazing guest, Monique Giroux, someone who I connected with much earlier in my career, many, many moons ago, but looking forward to delving into her story and her experience. A lot of similarities that we just realized that overlap between our own personal journeys, that we've got a bit of a shared experience. And I think you're really going to enjoy our conversation today. And Monique, thank you so much for joining us today. And it's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you, Charles. I'm looking forward to our chat.
Excellent. I think maybe before we jump into our conversation and our discussion today, I'd love to give listeners a bit of a background or insight as to who you are. And if you could maybe beyond what we see online or on your LinkedIn profile, tell us a little bit more about who you are, what makes you unique, your story, your journey, in a way that people can connect and understand a little bit more about you and your background.
It's a long story because, I'm approaching 60 years old and I feel like I've lived many, many lives in my 60 years. Where I am today, maybe we'll start with the present moment.
Yeah.
Where I am today is sitting in my childhood home where I grew up, a home my father built, and a home that's filled with his carpentry and his stained glass. It's been very grounding to move into my parents' home as they were downsizing and reconnecting with a community that I feel very rooted in. So, reconnecting with old friends. I had been away for 25 years. So a lot has changed in this community, and I'm really enjoying being part of it now. It's been 1 year since I've been back, and my time is spent supporting my parents, teaching at the local university here, Laurentian University. I teach sponsorship marketing in the sports admin program, and I teach yoga, and I'm a coach, and I've started a Plum Village Sangha because there wasn't one here, which is a meditation group. And I've joined a local board at the Rainbow Roots, who are stewards of all the trail system in this area. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun coming back and reconnecting with childhood friends. And so prior to coming back home, over a year ago, I received a call from my mom informing me that my father really wasn't doing well and she'd asked me to come back. My plan at the time was to go to India. I had been traveling as a nomad for 3 years and lived all over the world. Prior to that, I worked at CIBC and financial services for 19 years, almost 20 years, my career, and had a wonderful career at the bank. In 2021, made the decision to leave. And then from there, really sold everything other than my car. And, most of what I kept could fit in my car.
Wow.
And I traveled the world very lightly, living out of a suitcase and a backpack. And it was the freedom of that experience was really transformative, as you know, because I know you've traveled with your family quite a bit.
Yes.
Well, travel is a great way to heal and to learn about yourself and to learn about the world, and also really how little you need to be happy in life. I think that's going back far enough for now. I keep going back, but yeah, those are the highlights of the last couple of decades of my life.
Amazing. I love the fact that you said that you returned back to your childhood home. So a couple of things. Were you welcomed back with open arms, of course, by your family, but in terms of the community itself, it's been such a long time, and I'm sure you've made the occasional visit to return back. But now that you're living there, how has your transition been?
Oh,
For you as an individual and also just engaging with the community.
yeah, I felt very warmly received, and I would often comment on how life just feels easier here. I lived in Toronto for 20 years, and it can be a bit of a grind. And here in Sudbury, and I think in a lot of smaller communities, there's just a kindness, a gentleness. I really did feel welcomed with open arms. I mean, I came back, I'll be honest, I had ended a 10-year relationship. So I was grieving. I was not my best self. It was a difficult time for me. My father wasn't well. I spent a lot of time at a yoga studio, which is just down the street. It's literally a 10-minute walk from my house. And I felt like that was my little oasis. The owner, Anne Fraser, really, now I teach yoga there, but at the time I would say it, I shed a lot of tears on those yoga mats. That was part of my healing. And, she was instrumental in, reminding me of the gifts that I have to offer the world. And we've run a lot of workshops together. I teach cozy yoga on Monday nights, which is restorative yoga and yoga nidra. And then the university here, my goodness, they were so thrilled to have an industry expert living in the city that they found an opportunity for me to teach a course. And that started last September. And I absolutely loved it. I mean, I started my career as a teacher. I taught for 6 years before I went into the not-for-profit sector, before going to the bank. And I always thought it'd be nice to bookend my career with teaching near the end as well. So for me, it's a bit of a dream come true.
Wow. I love that story. Such a beautiful narrative, and the fact that everything's come around in many ways full circle. And so happy to hear that you were welcomed back into the community and that you've been able to weave yourself so seamlessly back into the community as well. It feels so natural. You talked earlier about working almost 2 decades, if not more, inside a very large organization, large institution, CIBC, doing a lot of meaningful work there, particularly on the philanthropic, community investment, marketing, branding side of things. And so, as you were coming towards the end of your tenure within the organization, when did you sense, or did you sense that that it may be time for a bit of a change, right? That maybe the life you were leading wasn't the one that you're meant to live in terms of the future direction or future evolution? Can you give us a sense, a bit of your thought process and your thinking behind that particular transition and that pivot?
Yes, there was a moment where I knew. There was a singular moment where I knew I needed to change something in my life. And it was the end of a 10-day meditation wellness retreat in Bali that I had gone to with my daughter. And at the end of those 10 days, I realized that I was sleeping through the night. And I took a deep breath, and then I realized that I could breathe without feeling pain in my chest. And I had never noticed that I had pain in my chest when I breathed, and I realized it was due to anxiety. And so in that moment, it became about the breath. And I set a goal for myself to find a way to live my life where I could breathe deeply and have peace of mind. And that set me on a course of learning about my own mental health, about stress and high functioning anxiety, which a lot of overachievers live with. And that's when I started to learn about yoga. I studied yoga nidra, restorative yoga, Reiki. I became a Reiki master. That eventually led me to forest therapy. I'm a forest therapy guide. And each of these restorative practices, I went deeper and deeper into myself. I learned how to slow down. I learned how to hear my inner voice and my intuition. And that is what started to shift everything.
I mean, for those individuals, I mean, it's such a remarkable journey. For people who are listening, when they get those signs, whether it's explicit or implicit, so often we're used to ignoring them. Like in many ways, I think particularly in the Western world, we're taught to think logically as opposed to thinking with our heart. And so, what would you tell that individual? What would you say to that individual who's, you know, many individuals, but that particular person who's going through a similar journey themselves, where they may not necessarily have had this epiphany, on the other side of the world, but maybe it's just through the normal day-to-day routines of life. What would you say to them in terms of being able to make that transition or being more attuned to listening to yourself?
It's almost like it happens in a moment where you just like all of a sudden your eyes are open and you see the world in a different way. One of my Buddhist teachers is Thich Nhat Hanh from the Plum Village tradition. And he is quoted as saying, "We spend our whole lives running, practice stopping." And I feel like that, I love that quote because it does describe my life up until that point in Bali. I was running. I was running every day, just getting through the day in almost like an autopilot mode my whole life. My mind was never in this present moment. It was always worrying. I was a worrier. I was always worrying. I would second guess the things that I had said in the meeting. And even as a vice president, this was happening. I mean,
Wow.
I was an executive at the bank, and I still had this mentality of always striving for perfection, always doubting myself, questioning myself in the state of fear. So always like reliving the past and oh, I should have said this or I should have said that. Why didn't I say that? Kicking myself. Or my mind was in the future worrying about things that hadn't happened yet.
Mm.
Right? But what am I going to say at that meeting? And so I was never in the present moment. And I think also I have a terrible memory. And I read somewhere that when you're not living life in the present moment, then you have no memories because you're never there actually living those moments. And so when I heard that quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, "We spend our lives running, practice stopping," I think my journey to wellness was all about learning how to stop so that I could live more mindfully.
I love that. I mean, I talk a lot about the power of pausing, and we both shared earlier that or I shared earlier that we've had similar journeys in the fact that being able to take some time away with my young family and spend some time traveling with them, and just recognizing the fact that yes, living my life on autopilot, as you said, thinking forward and thinking back, but not thinking about the present moment that I was in. And so, I think about halfway through the trip, similar to you, I just realized I'm like, I cannot believe that we're already halfway through the trip here, and I was thinking more about the return to entry back home, about all the things back home, as opposed to just taking in the surroundings and everything that's in and around me. And so the anticipation of going on the trip, and then when you're on the trip, the realizing like, oh, I have to start. How many more days left? How many more days left? And that countdown intuitively in the back of my mind, and I was just like, oh, and I think that's when I realized I'm like, I need to be much more aware of my surroundings. And so to your point, I have much stronger recollection and memories of the second half of our journey and trip around the world with our kids as opposed to the first half, because the first half I mean there was a bit of an adjustment for us just to be able to be all together at all times and away from our usual confines in our environment. but I'm far more in tune with the second half of our journey because I think I was much more in tune with the, even as I look through the pictures, I remember vivid details that I would never remember in the first half of the trip. So there's definitely a lot of value to what you're mentioning and what you're saying.
And that's why I really encourage people to experience slow travel. Let's be honest, travel can be stressful. And when I started the nomad journey, it was every week, I was on a train or a plane or going somewhere.
Yes.
And then you'd get to that next, I'd feel anxious
Yes.
with traveling from point A. With transition days were always hard for me, getting from point A to point B. Once I was at point B, then I could relax a little bit, but you're still figuring out, even how to make coffee and wherever you're staying, right? Or where the clothes- It's like everything's new. And I think that's good also for the brain and, to stretch yourself out of your comfort zone and have these experiences. But 3 years of that is, I learned a lot. And so one of the things was transition days. I made sure I didn't have anything the day before, the day after, just to have that ease. Things did go wrong. It's fine. Figure it out. There was never a rush to, have a conference call on a certain day or a meeting or be somewhere. So I planned my time differently, but I also stayed in one place for longer and ideally at least 1 month. 1 to 3 months, ideally, depending on the visa situation of the country you were in. But then that gives you also an opportunity to really get to know the community and feel a part of the community. And so, yeah, I changed how I was traveling, fairly early on because of my own awareness.
It's interesting. We were very intentional as well in terms of our trip and our travel, spending more time in fewer places. And there's the value of being able to feel like you're part of the community, especially when others who are locals reach out and provide you with support or engage with you. It's so nice to feel like you're part of a community, no matter how temporary it may feel. And so I think there's definitely a lot of we were intentional about doing it, and that makes a
Yeah.
huge difference in terms of the amount of time. And there are places that we travel to, and and they're, we'd feel guilty. At least I would feel guilty at first when we decided to take a slow day because I felt that we needed to see things and do things because we needed to take advantage of the fact that we were in a particular place or country. And so that took a long time to adjust to, and really realize that reducing that level of anxiety, saying, "Listen, we are here, we are together, and this is not a list of things that we need to check off and see or do. Let's just enjoy the experience no matter what we're doing and just enjoy each other's company and be able to appreciate the surroundings that we're in."
Absolutely. That's the difference between a tourist and a traveler.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. We would have people come to visit us, and in 1 week, they would do more in that place than we would do in 3 months there. But leave exhausted.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It's something that's so ingrained. I don't know if it's a Western culture thing or not, but it's something that's so ingrained in what we do about this kind of hurry up and wait or to look forward and look back, but never really be present in what we're doing.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things you said earlier, you said that you lived with a lot of anxiety throughout a lot of your career, even taking on a senior position within a very reputable organization. There's this assumption that the more senior you go, the more confident or more in tune or the less anxious you are about the situation because you've quote unquote made it or you're at a senior level. So there's an implication among many people, particularly further down the food chain, that this is someone who knows and is confident in what they're doing. When you look back on your career, were there other signs that you didn't read or didn't know how to read at the time that were kind of fueling that anxiety or that realization that it was time for a change as well?
Well, after leaving, I realized because I, with a lot of self reflection and meditation, where was this coming from? Where was this drive, this need for perfection, this need for achievement? Where was it coming from? And it really boiled down, and in a way, I find it very sad. It just came down to a need for validation. I just wanted, to be recognized as doing a good job. I was never an ambitious person. Like I was never, you know, There are a lot of ambitious people at the bank who want a better title or want to make more money. That was
Exactly.
never my motivator. I was not ambitious from that perspective. I just really wanted to do a good job and be recognized for it. It really was that simple. But then, why did I need that?
Mm.
And so understanding that even, has translated into other areas of my life too. It's been a really helpful insight to be aware of. So I think it's because I work as a coach. And when I see clients who are just pushing so hard, that's one of the questions I ask is why? What is really underneath this drive? What is it that you're seeking? In the Buddhist tradition, I practice Buddhist. I'm not a Buddhist, but I practice Buddhist meditation. And I'm affiliated with Plum Village, which has a monastery in France where I like to spend time when I can. And there's this concept in Buddhism called hungry ghosts. And hungry ghosts are beings on earth that have big bellies and big long necks and small mouths, and they're always trying to fill themselves, whether it's food, alcohol, drugs. And for me, I was a hungry ghost when I worked in corporate because I just wanted recognition. That's what so it's like, what is it that you're striving for? What need are you trying to fill that you can never seem to fill, that big belly of yours, right? And so I found that a really powerful image of, what is it you're craving that's driving your behavior?
Wow. And when you speak to your clients then as a coach, what do you see as that main driver of that behavior?
Everyone is different. We're all different and, what it is that we're seeking and what we feel that we need.
Would you say nature versus nurture or a mixture of both? Would you say? Or
Yeah, I think a mixture of both.
mm,
I think we inherit a lot from our ancestors. We know we inherit our physical,
right, the attributes, yeah.
it's in my
Hmm.
DNA or it's in my, you know, different diseases, but we also inherit the habits from our ancestors. So sometimes it's just you're not even aware of it.
Mhm. So true. I look at my parents, and it's funny you say that. The physical attributes of my dad, particularly because of the fact there's an old black and white picture on my youngest daughter's shelf, and anytime her friends come along, they're like, how old is your dad? Why does he have a black and white picture of himself on the shelf? And he's like, oh no, that's my daughter says, no, that's my grandpa. And they look at me and they look at the picture, they're like, wow, the physical resemblance is uncanny, right? And then I often think that I'm my own person, but there are things that I'll end up doing or that I'm called out on doing, and someone will say, "Oh," or my siblings will say, "You're acting exactly like dad," or "That's something exactly my mom would do," right? And so as I see my parents age, I'm like, "Wow, is this what my future looks like?" I mean, there's nature versus nurture, and then yes, there are attributes that you do get from your ancestors, but it doesn't mean that it's defined. You can be self-aware, see those things, and make sure that you are able to create your own individual self as well. So
Yeah, and it's all about awareness. Once you're aware that you have this in your nature, but it's not healthy or it's not, supporting the life you want to live, you can change it. So it's all about, they talk about habit energies. You can change your habit energies.
mm, most people feel stuck when it comes to being able to change it, don't know how to change or where to begin, right? We always think big. We always think, oh my gosh, I'm going to run a marathon. How am I going to do that? Okay. So was it harder for you to admit that you needed, something needed to change for you specifically? Or was it kind of trusting yourself enough to change it? How did you kind of go through that evolution on your own as well?
What was hard for me was knowing I needed to change, but not knowing how. And I was talking to someone the other day about exactly this thing where we feel like we need to control it. Like we feel like we need to plan it all out. Okay, first I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to do this. And so this person that I was talking to was also feeling very frustrated that she didn't know what to
Yes.
do. And I feel like it's this in between. You talk about the pause a lot. It's like there's this tension where, like I knew something needed to change. I didn't know what it was. And then something happened and I just like, again, I'm a very, I don't know. Something happened. I was like, okay, that's it. I'm done. Time to go. Time to leave the bank. There was a very specific incident that happened. And so I said to my friend, don't worry so much about the how. You will know. You'll be ready. You are getting ready. This in between stage is your emotionally, intellectually, maybe financially. You're starting to line things up because there's a shift coming. And so it's like this pause, this is I wrote this book called Lost Intentionally. In a way, it's about this. It's about, okay, I don't know where I'm going. I don't know what's going to happen yet next, but I'm going to trust that I'll know when I know. Like you know what I mean? Like it's trusting. I do believe that there's this divine guidance, there's this divine timing, and if you can just embrace this in between phase, knowing it's going to work out and you will have the answer when it's time. You don't have to force it.
It's so hard because you're right. I mean, the how is what we all kind of get fixated on in terms of wanting to control not only the how, but the outcome. And it means we've got a very linear thinking sort of process in terms of these are the steps I need to take to achieve this outcome. And when it doesn't follow those particular sequential steps, we all kind of seem at a loss for words. Are there any kind of tactics that you work with your clients on in terms of letting go of the how, letting go of it just because it's so hard. I mean, we are so contrived to think specifically in a linear fashion. And so, maybe it's a Western world thing, maybe it's our upbringing as well. But what are some of the things that you would work with someone on and say, this is how you can let go just of the how? Yeah.
Well, it might seem a little counterintuitive, but generally where I end up with clients at the beginning of our relationship is working with them on reconnecting with the things that bring joy into their lives. Because a lot of times when you're in this place of indecision, a change needs to happen, but you don't know what it is. It's very unsettling. It's not a happy place to be. And so I start with, it's very simple. What's your happy list? What are the things that you do in your life where you lose track of time because you're just in this flow or joy? Or even if you can't think of anything now, what about when you were a child? What are the things you love to do? And from there, they generate a list of, sometimes 10 things. The conversation is always the same. Oh my God, I totally forgot how much I loved doing that. And then we work on making time every day, every week to do something on that list. And to me, it comes down to once you start reconnecting with this joyfulness within yourself, it's an energetic shift that starts to happen. So I'm all about energy now. My job, I describe my job now as keeping my energy high, keeping my frequency, my vibration high, and noticing when it's low, and then going back to what are the things that bring it back up. This is the work I do with my clients. And when you're in this high vibration place, you radiate joy. You have a smile on your face. People notice it. People connect with it. And then honestly, the rest takes care of itself. So this is why I'm saying you don't need to like map it all out. It's just going to happen. Opportunities come your way, conversations, people come into your life, and okay, wow, this is here for me. I'm just going to leave this and go here.
It's beautiful. And maybe I'm misconstruing it, but is it the Book of Joy, The Power of Joy? There's a book that was done by Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama that they jointly wrote together. It's a beautiful book on just the power of love and the power of joy. And I completely agree. People can see it and people can feel it. And it's so funny how now I'm much more, and I don't know if I'm having more of these conversations. I'm just more self-aware, but I just find that more and more people are talking more about the energy that people have, and that we all have this energy. And you can see how you gravitate to some people and you don't gravitate to others, and how you feel a kinship and connection to some individuals and not to others. And I see it more now than I can believe it. But and I remember going for a run a year ago through the neighborhood. Something I rarely do, but I go for an occasional run, and this This lady came out from her porch, came and stopped me. She goes, I've seen you running past this neighborhood every now and then. I was like, okay. And I'm huffing and puffing, sweating. And she's like, I just want to say that every time I see you, you make me happy. And I was like, oh, okay. She goes, I can just tell that you're vibrating very positively. And I was like, I was so taken aback and so goosebumps and like, what is happening here? This like, candid camera, what is going on here? But I'm just much more in, and of course, like anything else, you have your good days and bad days, but maybe I'm just now much more introspective, more self-aware, more talk positively about myself. My goal for this year is to speak kindness of myself, be a bit more patient, give myself a bit more grace, a bit more self-love. These are all things in my past that I would have said, this is true out there. I'm black and white, show me the proof, let me see the evidence, manifestation, like what is all that stuff? Like I want to see the cold hard facts, right? And so it's very interesting to see how, for me in my own journey, as I'm hearing you go, I've kind of evolved and moved along that continuum to be a lot more self-aware of these things and to gravitate more to people and do spend time on the things that I really enjoy doing and to minimize the things that suck my energy and the individuals that suck away my energy, right? And so those energy vampires. And so it's so interesting to hear you talk about that as well.
And imagine a world where everyone lived this way. There would be no war, there'd be no crime, and there's a meditation style called loving kindness meditation. And I did a Vipassana, which is a 9-day silent retreat that was all loving kindness meditation, where essentially you're radiating love first to yourself, then to others, then to the whole world and out into the universe. You're like, and you feel like you are a radiating ball of light. And I think this is how we heal the world. Truly. Last night in our cozy yoga, I took the group through this meditation where they were radiating from their heart space to themselves, to each other, to everyone in the studio, to our whole community, whole world, and then we came back. And you feel it. You feel it. And especially when you're a group meditating together in that way, it's very powerful. So I think it's all about energy, managing your energy, and noticing, kind of like you can call it woo-woo. There's no magic to it, like we are energetic beings. And I think we like attracts like. So if you're radiating at this frequency, you're bringing more of that into your world, but you're also then, you touch someone's life through your energy when you were out there running and they noticed it. I've had those experiences too.
So
very
beauty.
powerful.
Yeah, very powerful. And it just seems so strange that like no one's ever said that to me. And of course I had my defensive nature up because I'm like, what? I don't know this person. Why are they approaching me? And they were just so adamant about wanting to come and talk to me that it just seems so, yeah. Yeah. And of course I've never seen this it's a neighborhood city is a big city living in Toronto, and I've never come across this individual again. Every now and then I've been wondering, I'm like, let me go knock on the door to see how they're doing, and which I should probably do, but it's just so interesting. I mean, so when you were making these changes and going through this evolution, whether leaving the bank, et cetera, like, did anybody try talking you out of this kind of, Monique, maybe you just need some time off, maybe you need to take 2 weeks off, go do your thing, then come back and join us again. Did you start second guessing yourself, or was everyone supportive right away? That, people start thinking, oh my goodness, you're having this midlife crisis. I don't know how, because, we are all very myopic in terms of the viewpoint and in terms of how this approaches. And so I'm sure people are thinking, you're leaving a great opportunity behind. Don't do this. I don't know if you went through that.
It was a weird time because it was 2021, still pandemic days.
Right.
So I was part of that great resignation. I think I was at the forefront of the great resignation. So yeah, some people thought I was crazy. You work your whole life to get to where you are and you're just walking away from it. You're just walking away from it. The manager that I reported into, she and I had worked together for over 10 years. So she knew me really well and she was very supportive. She was always a champion of mine and I was very grateful for her leadership. And I said to her, I'm not leaving. I'm not going to a competitor because that's always a very sensitive topic, right?
Someone who's worked at the bank, yes, I can relate to that. Yes.
I said, I don't know where I'm going and what I'm going to do next, but I just know it's time. It's time for me to make a shift. And she said that She said, "You're going to go save the world one person at a time,"
I love.
which is very, very kind of her. And in the role I had huge impact. And now it's very one-on-one. It is definitely like, and I didn't know this is where I would end up when I left. The work I do is on a very much, much smaller scale, but in a deeper, deeper way. And I love it. How I spend my time again is when opportunities come my way, I really take time in meditation and reflection and to get a sense of how does this feel? Does this feel right? It's this trusting my gut and I only work on the things that feel aligned and feel good and aren't going to cause anxiety. My anxiety, I'm grateful for my anxiety now because it's my
Yes.
early warning system
Right.
that something is off in my life. I feel that fluttery feeling in my chest, like, okay, there's something here I need to pay attention to. And I stop and I look at it. It's amazing how you can learn to communicate with your body.
We ignore it so often. I mean, I have, and of course, I'm much more self-aware now than I have ever been in my life. But there's still moments where I'm kind of like, I need to get this thing done because it's the check mark it's the box I need to check, right? And then I realize afterwards, I'm like, my body, they were telling me the universe, body, whatever spiritual being guides was trying to guide me to something or tell me something, right? That I choose to ignore. And I mean, you've got your own free will of being able to pursue these things, but it's amazing how the signs are there. I think we're all looking for some sort of, thing from the sky to tell you what to do and direction to go. But in many ways, it's amazing how that creativity, that thought process we have internally, we really, in many ways, I think, know what the answers or the direction is. But we choose to ignore it because we've been conditioned a certain way. Society has told us that this is the way to do it, et cetera, et cetera. And I often find that those other individuals who are pointing you in the particular direction that everybody else is traveling in, often in many cases seem to be the most unhappy, if that's a way of saying it, or the most, it's very interesting that they're like, we need to join us all because we're all going in this direction, and you need to come and join us and be unhappy with the rest of us, so we can, misery loves company type of thing. And so it's been interesting in terms of that whole journey, as I'm probably sure you've seen in your own practice as well.
There's a quote that I'm sure you've heard: when the student is ready, the teacher appears. But the second half of that quote that we don't hear as much is when the student is really ready, the teacher disappears. We are our own teacher, right? We are our own teacher. I did have a Buddhist teacher, Bhante Vimala Ramsey, who said that you are your own teacher. Like, you have this wisdom within yourself. You just need to take the time to go into stillness, to hear that voice, and to be open to receiving those insights.
I've never heard the second half of that quote. Thank you for sharing. Beautiful. So what did slowing down maybe teach you about yourself that speed had been hiding all along? Is there any, yeah, I'd be interested in hearing that perspective from you.
The Vipassana, the silent retreat, I would recommend to anyone. Is the best way to really learn about yourself and where your mind's attention is going. So that Vipassana I did shortly after I left the bank. It was January of 2022. And what I realized was, because you're in silence and I did this in a cabin in the woods. So I was completely isolated in January. So was, snowed in at one point. It was beautiful experience. But what I realized about myself is my mind is constantly making to-do lists. As soon as I stop and sit in meditation, I need to do I need to do this.
Yes.
Da, 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 da. So the first few days, I became aware of this habit. And once I became aware of that and was able to release that, then it opened up my mind to other things. So I thought that was an interesting learning, So it's like, what is your mind preoccupied with? And as you can release some of that, it just opens up more space for going in and quiet. And I think, eventually it's layers. The more you do this, the deeper you go, the more you learn about yourself. It's like layers of an onion. It just keeps going deeper and deeper.
Right.
And
Till you get to that core.
yeah, and there's no end to it. Like it's like a constant. I feel like I almost wish I had started this when I was a child.
Oh
Like, there's
boy.
just so much to learn, and that's very exciting. I'm grateful that I have the conditions in my life to be
Yes.
here and
Yes.
to be able to do this and even to share this with other people.
Yes.
And I think
I
that's truly such an honor.
I agree. I've said the same words to myself that I wish I had realized or become much more self-aware much earlier in my life. And I mean, self-aware, sure I was, but it was more towards what was in the future, what was behind me, as opposed to what was around me. And so I'm in my late 40s now, and I think about, whoa, what if I, figured this out much earlier in my life, in my career? But everything happens for a reason. I'm grateful, like you mentioned, I'm grateful for the fact that I've not necessarily had this epiphany now, but just had a bit of a reawakening now to my surroundings and to life. And I feel very grateful and fortunate and privileged that this is the journey that I'm on now, and to enjoy whatever comes my way and whatever is meant for me as well.
Yeah, and the other thing I learned from stillness is I've learned to be comfortable with silence. And I hadn't really realized how much we have this habit of filling in the space. If you're driving the car with someone, there's, a lot of times when they feel like this need to talk all the time. Or if you're having a conversation with someone, filling in the space. And one of the things I love, there's this great podcast called The Way Out is In. It's, the way out of your suffering is to go inward, is essentially what that title is about. It's produced by Village. And I love listening to it because it kind of mimics what happens at the monastery, where whenever the bell rings, they have like a big, big bell.
Hmm.
Everyone stops what they're doing. You could be like mid chew or mid conversation or just walking. Everyone stops. And the purpose is it's a reminder to come back to the present moment. So you're walking, you might be walking back to your room to get something, you're thinking about that instead of being in the present moment. And so throughout the day, the bell goes and everyone stops. Oh, yes, okay, take a breath, come back to yourself. It's this beautiful tradition. And in the podcast, they'll often, because they're at the monastery when they record it and the bell goes up, they'll stop in the middle of the podcast.
Oh, okay. I love
Right?
that.
And they'll just pause. You'll hear the birds singing,
I love
and then they'll
that.
continue on. Like it's so gentle and beautiful. And so it's that reminder to pause. That reminder is called the mindfulness bell, to come back to your breath, come back to yourself. And so becoming comfortable with silence is something that I've learned over the years through these practices. And yeah, and I've also learned I'm more introverted than I thought. I thought I was the big extrovert, but I actually really appreciating time alone. Maybe my traveling solo also helped me become more comfortable with being on my own and that introversion. Yeah. So that surprised me because I love people. I always got my energy from people, but now it's a little bit more.
I'm the same. I've always known I'm an introvert, so I enjoy my own company. I mean, or maybe it's a bit of a blend of both, but I'm the type of person where if I'm going to a function or to an event, I need time to decompress on the way home or in the evening. Like, there's no way I could do this back to back. It's a lot for me. It takes a lot out of me. So yeah, I can relate to that. I mean, this has been so much fun. It's been many, many years since you and I have had a conversation. My spouse used to work as part of the broader team that you were a part of, and speaks very highly of you. And I enjoyed my time in terms of engagement with you as well. But this has been an enjoyable conversation. I really enjoyed connecting and speaking with you today, and even just following your journey from afar and seeing so many similarities with telling our stories in a book, and the travels that we've both faced, and just kind of the reorientation that we've gone through as part of our careers and the evolution that we've gone through as well. So this has been such an enjoyable conversation. Thank you very, very much for making the time. And yeah, I'm looking forward to keeping in touch as we move forward.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Charles. I've enjoyed it very much as well. And, I send you peace and
Thank
happiness,
you.
and joy in your life and your family. Yeah, take care.
Thank you. And I reciprocate that to you and your family and your loved ones as well. Thank you.
Thank you.